Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're going straight into some really fundamental sociological ideas: modernity, postmodernity, and globalization.
Core stuff.
Exactly. Now, if you're tuning in, maybe as a sociology student, wrestling with these concepts, and we know many of you our aim isn't just to, rehash textbook definition.
No, definitely not.
We want to sort of unpack these terms in a way that hopefully sparks some understanding and reveals the ongoing debates that make them so relevant. We'll be drawing from a summary that lays out the main arguments. So yeah, get ready to really explore these frameworks.
Agreed. This is like foundational stuff. And understanding these perspectives is just key to analyzing pretty much any social issue you'll bump into in your sociological journey.
Right.
Our goal today is really to move beyond just the simple definitions and actually get a feel for how these concepts, help us interpret the complexities of the world around us.
Okay, let's lay the groundwork then. Modernity. Our source defines it as, well, an era built on reason, science, a belief in progress, and of course, industrialization.
The big hitters.
Yeah. Think of the rise of the nation-state, the spread of capitalism, this strong faith in scientific solutions, mass production churning out goods, and the idea of relatively clear-cut, shared social identities.
Almost sounds quaint now in some ways.
It almost feels like we're looking back at a different world, doesn't it? But here's the big question, the one that will sort of guide our discussion. Has this modern framework truly become a thing of the past?
And that's the absolute central point of contention, isn't it? Modernity, as the source highlights, it established a particular way of organizing society. It was based on these universal principles and the idea that we could improve the human condition.
Through rational thought.
Through rational thought and scientific advancement, exactly. Consider, the development of centralized legal systems, the way industrialization just reshaped social structures, even those big overarching narratives about national identity and progress that were so prevalent. What's fascinating for us, especially if you're a sociology student listening, is to critically examine which elements of this modern project are still dominant forces.
Right.
And where we actually see significant challenges or shifts happening.
Challenges like, globalization, for instance. The source describes it as this increasing interconnectedness of people and places across the planet. That idea of the global village.
Made real, yeah.
Made real. It's hard to think of any aspect of life today, from the economy to, our entertainment, that isn't touched by this global web.
Absolutely. Globalization is just the inescapable context for understanding both modernity and the debates around what might come after it. And the source neatly outlines 4 key areas driving this interconnectedness, which are honestly incredibly useful for grasping its multifaceted nature.
Let's break those down.
Okay. First, the economic shifts, the rise of these massive multinational corporations, your Amazons, your Apples.
Household names.
Exactly. Then the intricate dance of global financial markets and this widespread practice of outsourcing labor. It's really cemented a global capitalist system.
It's kind of mind-boggling when you actually stop and think about the journey of just one product, maybe designed in one place, manufactured somewhere else, shipped across continents.
Yeah.
It's become so normal. We often don't stop to consider the incredibly complex global systems that make it possible. And then there's the technological revolution.
Oh, huge.
The internet, smartphones, affordable air travel, these have literally compressed time and space.
Precisely. Technology has acted as this powerful catalyst, hasn't it? Just accelerating the pace and the reach of globalization. The ability to communicate instantly across the globe, to engage in international trade with unprecedented speed, and to travel relatively easily. It's fundamentally reshaped human interaction and just our experience of the world.
Okay, so economics, technology. What else?
Then we have the political dimension. You've got the decline of communism as a major alternative system and the growing influence of international organizations like the EU or the UN.
Right. Shifting power.
Yeah, it suggests a sort of diffusion of political power beyond the traditional boundaries of the nation-state. Still important, but not the only player.
And finally, the cultural and identity shifts. This is where things get really interesting, I think, especially for us thinking sociologically. The spread of Western, particularly American, media, fashion, music, food globally, it's not just about, shared consumer habits.
No, it goes deeper.
It raises these profound questions about how these global cultural flows interact with and sometimes challenge existing local traditions and identities. We see this fascinating blending of cultural elements happening everywhere.
Exactly. And for you as a sociology student, it's crucial to consider, is this just leading to a homogenization of global culture, like a global monoculture?
Hmm.
Or are we seeing the emergence of new hybrid cultural forms as different influences interact and blend?
That's a great question.
It's against this backdrop, this context of increasing globalization, that the perspective of postmodernism really gains some traction.
Okay, so postmodernism. The source presents it as the argument that these massive global shifts we've just been discussing actually signify a fundamental break from modernity,
A real rupture.
ushering in a new kind of society, one that's saturated with media, incredibly diverse, and frankly feels pretty unstable sometimes.
That's the core of the postmodern argument, yeah.
Huh.
They contend that the certainties, those overarching narratives that characterize modernity, are sort of dissolving in the face of these rapid, far-reaching transformations.
Okay.
The source highlights some key features of this postmodern society, and the first one is fragmentation.
Fragmentation, meaning
Meaning, instead of being held together by a shared set of values and norms, like in classic modernity, we see identities becoming much more fluid, more diverse, drawn from this vast array of subcultures, lifestyles, even brands.
okay.
Think about how people today might identify really strongly with, say, online gaming communities or specific music genres affiliations that might not neatly align with traditional social categories like class or nationality.
It's almost like our identities have become more like a personal collage, right?
Yeah,
Pieced together from different sources.
that's a good way to put it. And then there's this idea of media saturation. The source mentions Baudrillard's concept of hyperreality.
Hyper-reality. Sounds intense.
It is. It's where the images and representations we see in the media can actually feel more real than our direct experiences.
Wow, like social media filters, that's a prime example, isn't it? We often present this idealized version of ourselves online, and that curated image can, at times feel more authentic, maybe even to ourselves, than our everyday appearance. So, I mean, with these increasingly curated online realities, are we seeing a shift in what we even consider authentic experience?
Well, that's a critical question. Baudrillard argued exactly that the lines between reality and its representation have become so blurred that the simulations, the media images, can actually precede and shape our understanding of reality itself.
So the map comes before the territory.
Kind of, yeah. Consider reality TV or the, carefully constructed personas of celebrity influencers. They all contribute to this sense of a manufactured reality that can be incredibly influential. And this idea of hyperreality connects directly to the next postmodern notion, a loss of truth.
Right. The source points out that postmodern thinkers are pretty skeptical of those big, all-encompassing theories, those meta-narratives.
The grand stories.
Like Marxism, with its grand theory of historical progress through class struggle, or functionalism, emphasizing society as a system striving for equilibrium. Lyotard argued, didn't he, that there isn't one single universal truth.
Exactly. But rather a multiplicity of individual perspectives.
It's almost like saying, okay, my perspective is valid, and your perspective is valid, and that's kind of the extent of it.
Pretty much. The concept of objective universal truth becomes highly problematic within this framework. Truth becomes localized, subjective, dependent on context.
Okay.
And this fundamentally challenges a core tenet of the whole Enlightenment project, that belief that science and reason could lead us to a more objectively understood and ultimately better world.
Right.
Postmodernists really question how we can even talk about societal improvement in a meaningful way if our understanding of reality itself is so mediated and fragmented. If there's no objective reality, how do we fix it?
It's a really challenging perspective, definitely.
Yeah.
But then the source introduces Anthony Giddens and his counterargument, late modernity.
Late modernity, yes.
He suggests that perhaps we haven't fully transitioned into some completely new postmodern era, but rather that the core dynamics of modernity are still very much at play.
Just intensified.
Right, albeit in a more intense and complex way.
Giddens offers a more nuanced interpretation, I think. He agrees that profound changes are underway, absolutely. But he argues that these are best understood as intensifications and transformations within the modern framework, rather than a complete departure from it.
Okay, so what does that look like?
He highlights two key features of this late modernity. The first is disembedding.
Disembedding.
Yeah, the way social relationships and institutions are increasingly detached from specific local contexts. Think about online banking. Your financial transactions aren't tied to a physical branch anymore.
Or remote working.
Exactly. Remote work, where your colleagues might be scattered across the globe. or even forming really close relationships with people you've only ever interacted with online.
Right.
It's like we're increasingly living in these more abstract social spaces.
It feels like our social world is becoming less anchored in specific places. Yeah.
Mhm.
And the second key feature Giddens points to is reflexivity.
Reflexivity.
The source explains that tradition doesn't dictate our actions in the same way it used to. We are constantly forced to reflect on our choices, assess risks, make decisions based on available information.
Well, all the time.
This constant process of self-monitoring and reevaluation leads to our identities and cultures becoming more fluid, more subject to change. It's like we're all constantly works in progress.
Precisely. We are continually evaluating ourselves and the world around us, and this process shapes our actions and our identities.
No.
Now, while this can definitely lead to a sense of uncertainty and constant change, Giddens argues it's still happening within a modern framework.
That's so.
Because reason and information still play a crucial role in our decision-making, even if those decisions lead to more fluid and less predictable outcomes than maybe classical modernity expected.
Okay, that makes sense. So the source then tries to weigh the strengths and weaknesses of these different perspectives. It highlights that postmodernism offers some really valuable insights, doesn't it? Into the growing diversity we see, the pervasive influence of consumer culture, the undeniable role of media in shaping our lives.
Yeah, it certainly resonates with that feeling, that lived experience that we live in a rapidly changing and sometimes pretty disorienting world.
Absolutely. But, it's not just a one-way street, is it?
Mm.
While Western media has this strong global presence, we also see that hybridization of cultures you mentioned earlier.
Right. Local artists, creators reinterpreting, adapting these influences in unique ways,
Yeah.
leading to entirely new cultural forms.
Think of K-pop's global success blending Korean and Western musical elements. That's not just simple copying.
No, not at all. Those are definitely areas where postmodernism provides a powerful lens for analysis. It captures that lived experience of fragmentation and the huge role of media in constructing our perceptions of reality. However,
There's always a however.
there usually is. The source also points out some key criticisms. The rejection of any overarching truth, any meta-narrative, can be problematic, especially when you're trying to address issues of social inequality.
No.
Well, if there's no shared understanding of what constitutes injustice, how do we effectively challenge it? How do you build a movement?
That's a really critical point, especially for us as sociology students, right?
Yeah.
If everything's just a matter of perspective, it can become really difficult to build consensus around social problems or to advocate for collective action and social change.
Exactly. And the source also notes that postmodernism can sometimes feel a bit, well, abstract, maybe vague. It doesn't always offer concrete solutions for societal improvement.
Strong on critique, maybe less so on the what next.
Perhaps. And as the source reminds us, Giddens and others argue that despite all these significant shifts, fundamental aspects of modernity, like the global reach of capitalism, the continued importance of the nation-state, our reliance on scientific knowledge, they persist.
Albeit in evolved forms.
Albeit in evolved, intensified forms. So it's this fundamental debate. Are we witnessing a radical break with the past, a truly postmodern condition? Or are we seeing an intensification and transformation of existing modern structures, late modernity?
Now, for you listening, maybe as a sociology student, understanding this debate is absolutely key. The source even includes an exam tip.
Yeah.
Remember those?
Oh, yes.
Highlighting the importance of comparing postmodernism with foundational modern theories like Marxism and functionalism, and using Giddens' work to illustrate this ongoing discussion. So how does grasping this distinction, postmodernity versus late modernity, actually equip you in your sociological studies?
Well, understanding this debate provides you with a really critical framework for analyzing a vast spectrum of contemporary social phenomena. It helps you ask better questions.
Like what?
Like, for instance, when you're examining the formation of online communities, are you seeing a postmodern fragmentation of identity? Or is it better understood as a late modern expression of reflexivity, people choosing their affiliations? When you're analyzing global economic inequalities, does a postmodern focus on dispersed power dynamics offer a more compelling explanation than, say, a late modern analysis of the intensified reach of global capitalism?
Right, the lens changes the view.
Exactly. The theoretical lens you employ will shape the questions you ask, the methodologies you might choose, and the interpretations you develop in your sociological work. And when we talk about meta-narratives...
Well, yes, you mentioned those earlier.
Right, just to clarify for anyone listening, think of grand, overarching stories that societies tell themselves to explain how the world works and where it's going. In sociology, classic examples include Marxist theories of historical materialism.
Class struggle driving history.
Right, positing that predictable progression. Or functionalist perspectives that emphasize societal equilibrium and shared values as the primary drivers of social order. Postmodernism challenges these big universal explanations.
Got it. So it's not just abstract academic theory then, it's more like a practical toolkit for making sense of the complexities of the social world and for grounding your sociological analysis.
Precisely.
Okay, let's try to synthesize this a bit. We've explored modernity as this era defined by reason, progress, industrialization.
The foundations.
Then globalization as the force driving this incredible global interconnectedness.
The engine of change.
Then postmodernism argues this has led to a fundamentally new, fragmented, media-saturated society characterized by real skepticism towards universal truths.
The break.
While late modernity suggests that the core of modernity persists, but in intensified and transformed ways, evident in things like disembedded relationships and constant reflexivity.
Continuation, but different.
So yeah, with this unprecedented level of global interconnectedness and the shifts it's brought about, it's perhaps no surprise that some sociologists began to question the very foundations of the modern world, which leads us straight to the emergence of postmodernism.
Precisely. And globalization acts as a central engine in all of this, doesn't it? Accelerating many of the trends that both postmodern and late modern theorists are grappling with. It's the driving force behind so much of the interconnectedness, the flow of cultures, the economic transformations that fuel these ongoing debates about the fundamental nature of contemporary society.
So a final thought then, especially for you continuing your sociological explorations. Really consider this. With the rapid advancements in technology we're seeing now, think about the rise of sophisticated artificial intelligence, increasingly immersive digital realities. How does this further blur those lines between the physical and the virtual?
That's a huge question.
Does this propel us further into a truly postmodern condition where media and simulation become even more dominant forces shaping our reality? Or is it perhaps simply another intensification of those late modern trends? Giddens talked about disembedding, reflexivity, constantly pushing us to adapt and redefine our understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
A really crucial question to keep reflecting on, I think, both in the context of your sociological studies and just your observations of the world unfolding.
Definitely something to mull over. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.